It is my pleasure to welcome you all to episode 150 of the Tectonic Takes podcast. Bienvenidos a Tectonic Takes because we have a crossover, of course. We have Cesar from Gol Sided, and we have a healthy panel of our usual podcast hosts with Devon, Abram, and myself. We're going to be talking about Mexico versus Japan. We're coming back from the international break, and that's the key matchup we're interested in from a Bay Area perspective. Of course, they met in the Oakland Coliseum this past Saturday. I'll get to share my experiences firsthand covering it as part of the press, and we'll all react to it. Of course, we have three Mexico national team supporters here, and then we will preview and get you set up for the big game, San Jose Earthquakes versus LAFC at Levi Stadium. So a lot to talk about, exciting times for soccer in the Bay Area, and that's pretty much the headline, right? Cesar, just having Mexico come here in Oakland for the first time in 14 years, but also returning to the Bay Area where they've had played a few times. Maybe not always the happiest of memories, but they're always happy to see the local support for their team.
Yeah, and it's a big like celebration amongst the fans. It's banda comes out, the tacos come out, even the hashtag tacos versus sushi I thought was kind of funny on the screen while we were watching it. So yeah, it's a big fun whenever the Mexican national team comes around. And unfortunately, I've been at one of those 7-0 games, or the only one in the Bay. Wasn't fun, but I mean, other than that, like the atmosphere is usually like top notch, and it makes us excited for the World Cup coming next summer.
I might as well
I'm
get everyone's quick opinions on this. Devin, do you prefer tacos or sushi?
I'm a burrito guy, so the next closest thing I guess would be same culture tacos. Although I'm not gonna say I despise sushi or anything, but I am allergic to some types of nuts and shellfish, so I do have a bias against that. So
Yeah. I gotta stick up for tacos, of course, being a proud Mexican, but I do love me some sushi too. I've had my fair share of sushi. Definitely during my college days at UC Davis when the line was too long at the school little cafeteria where you could just get quick lunch before class, and it's like, okay, I'll just grab some sushi and I'll be out of here. I'll pay my $7 or $8, whatever it was. Those were the days. But yeah, Univision knew what they were doing. They get away with some wacky things like that hashtag, but that definitely got a lot of people's attention. And one thing that did get a lot of people's attention, we'll talk a little bit about Japan's lineup first before we dive deeper into the Mexican side of things. Of course, more people watch us that root for Mexico, but we definitely have to give a lot of credit to the strong lineup that we got for Japan, and this could be very similar to their lineup that kicks off for the World Cup. So in goal, they had Zion Suzuki. They had back three of Koi Takura, Tsuyoshi Watanabe, and Ayumu Seko. They had Ritsudoan on the right, Kaoru Mitoma on the left. They had a midfield duo of Wataru Endo, a champion with Liverpool, and Daichi Kamada, also an FA Cup winner and Supporter Shield winner with Crystal Palace. So they got the credentials in this Japanese side. And then their front three was Takumi Minamino, Ayase Ueda, and the always exciting to watch Takefusa Kubo, and he was their offensive MVP for Japan. Any other standout players that you felt like it was fun to watch them all together for Japan after seeing them for so many leagues that you cover at Gol Sided, Cesar?
Mainly, like Kubo for me was really fun to watch. Don't always get to watch the La Liga. I'm usually most up to date on Premier League, but I mean, watching him play and just skirmishing by Gallardo was really fun to watch. And as a Mexico fan, it kind of gets you a little scared that maybe Gallardo isn't the man. But I mean, Kubo, Mitoma were good. I thought Endo was really good at the midfield and just strong Japan overall.
Yep, and just taking a look at their subs, this is where they scared me even more. So they were able to bring in six players that also played among Europe's leagues. Not all in the top five leagues. Of course, Daisen Maeda was one of their subs, and he plays for Celtic. But when the subs are coming from still big clubs in Europe, Belgian Pro League, that shows you the level of depth that Japan have. They called up more European-based players than the U.S. men's national team did. Even if USA had their A roster, you probably still see an MLS player sneak in here or there. Same case for Japan, where they have a couple J League players, like their backup goalkeeper and maybe a few other depth players, but it's been really incredible to see how many players have come through in Europe, and they've also performed at the world stage. That's where teams like the United States haven't done yet. Like, even their European-based players, they've faltered in the Copa America and some other big games. Japan, they won a group with Spain and Germany at the last World Cup. They took Croatia to penalties and then unfortunately got knocked out at the round of 16. And we talked about Endo. That was a big-time matchup between him and Marcel Ruiz of Toluca. So I'll introduce the Mexico lineup here. We have Luis Malagon in goal, Jorge Sanchez, Cesar Montes, Johan Vasquez, and Jesus Gallardo were the back line. We had Edson Alvarez. Unfortunately, he had to come off in 30 minutes in due to injury. We have Marcel Ruiz and Orbelin Pineda completing that midfield three. And then the front line consisted of Roberto Alvarado, Raul Jimenez, and Alexis Vega. And notable subs included Chucky Lozano from San Diego FC. It was nice for Bay Area fans to see him in Oakland, even though he wasn't available for the San Jose Earthquakes game a few weeks ago. And then Santi Jimenez of AC Milan came off the bench too. Eric Lira was the player who replaced Edson Alvarez after his injury. So, Abram, I'll get your thoughts on the lineup, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some key players with Cesar in a little bit. So, Abram, I think this is one of, if not the strongest Mexico lineup available besides Gilberto Mora, who was unavailable because they're preparing him for the U20 World Cup. So, when you see this lineup, does it give you a lot of optimism for Mexico or more of the same?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on record on the podcast not have too much optimism for how Mexico, as I guess as a franchise, handle things. But no, I do think this is a strong lineup. I do think that if you're the opposition, then you're looking at this lineup and you definitely have a lot of questions that you need to like think about. A lot of strong players in the lineup. I think that Marcel Ruiz is for me a bit of a more of an unknown in the midfield. I haven't seen him play as much as I've seen like the others. You mentioned Gallardo and I don't know. It's another unknown in terms of like which Gallardo are we getting today? He's been inconsistent since the minute I saw him make his debut like years ago. I was like, is this really who we got left back? Okay. And it kind of has, I've had that, attitude about him the whole time he's been here. But, no, I mean, regardless of what I said, I do think that there's a lot of strong, pieces in this team. I think that, we don't have, Mora, but I think Pineda is a very good attacking midfielder. I think that, yeah, the team looks really good and we didn't score any goals, but if you're looking at it on paper, we have a very strong attacking lineup that we haven't really had, I guess, names that maybe foreigners would recognize. I feel like we have a decent amount of those right now, which is, always good to have.
Yep. And we talked a little bit about Gallardo. That's one of the big stories, particularly concerns in that defense. Center backs, you have a solid pairing usually between Montes and Vasquez. That was one of the key moments of the game. But Sanchez and Gallardo in particular never really seemed to have 2 games in a row where they're effective for Mexico. Of course, Sanchez had some failed stints in Europe. Gallardo has been a Liga MX lifer. So you're kind of reliant on Luis Malagon, who was the MVP for Mexico in this game. He had to make some brilliant saves. But where they really struggled was midfield, especially after Edson Alvarez was injured. So I'll turn it over to you, Cesar. I'm really scared to see how long Alvarez is going to be out. You can take me back to your thoughts when you saw that injury happen. And then it was Lira, Ruiz, and Pineda up against Premier League quality midfielders, among other threats for Japan the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, Edson coming out, we've criticized him on Gol Sided pod quite a lot because we feel like he cannot give us that long ball, that through ball, that a little bit of more creative that we want from him. He's really good defensively, but I feel like during this game we needed something more. We needed that, through ball to Raul or to Alexis Vega or to El Piojo Alvarado. And then now him going down and getting injured, it's like even more red alerts, right? Alarms going off. Eric Lira did his job. He's a Liga MX lifer as well. I'm sure he's tried to go to Europe at some point, but you could definitely see the quality when you put him up against Endo or the European squad that this Japanese team has. Same thing with Orbelin Pineda. Yeah, he's in Europe, he's in Greece, plays champions or whatever, but it's not the same quality as playing in the Premier League or playing in La Liga. So we're definitely missing. For me, the biggest miss was Gilberto Mora, and not because of he's 16, but he has that that gift that he can hold the ball and that find the spaces even at his young age, just being able to just find the right gaps, find the right pass, find the right tempo, that I've been going at Orbelin for not having or not being creative enough. Marcel Ruiz had a decent game, but we wanted more. I mean, this Japanese squad in the midfield was just too much quality, and I think Mexico in general lacked that quality.
Yeah, a player like Mora is like, how are you going to replace that? Because you can't just coach it. You can't tell somebody, oh, be creative.
Yeah.
You have to have that. You have to be like
natural
endowed with
instinct.
it. Exactly.
Yeah, like what Pedri has, right? He has that tempo of knowing what to do, when to do it. I mean, I don't think Orbelin Pineda has that in him.
Yeah, and Devon, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I had a question. I mean, like, as Tectonic Takes, we like to discuss a lot about Quakes, but I think there is a similar connection with what Cesar was talking about with one of the players who he deemed as like a struggling player on the field during the 90-minute period. I want to connect it to like Amal Pellegrino now that he's in San Diego, and I don't even think we've discussed this on the podcast yet. But to Amal Pellegrino, while he was on the Earthquakes this season, he hadn't really shown much on the field, if anything, But in one of the interviews to Bruce Arena, Bruce had stated that he was one of the best strikers in the training ground. He was one of the best finishers, had the best technique, one of the best talents out there. Cesar, do you think that maybe that is like a similar case to what is happening with El Tri? Yeah. He may have had like great performances on the training ground, but then just didn't produce as much on the field.
Yeah, I do think that maybe on the practice pitch with the rest of his teammates, he does show his quality. But when it comes down to doing it at a real game or against real talent or a test, he doesn't completely come through. And Orbelin Pineda, that's the thing, is like he's done this multiple times through multiple coaches throughout the years. It's like, is he fooling everybody, or is he going all out at practice only and says, wait, like games, maybe I'll just do 75% or whatever. So I don't know. It's just a big question with him. It's a big question with Carlos or Charlie Rodriguez. It's the same thing. So yeah, I mean, we just haven't had talent come through Mexico that can replace those.
And one thing that's been frustrating whenever I've looked at Liga MX rosters, particularly whenever it's the playoffs, Leagues Cup, CONCACAF Champions, whatever, is I look at the players that are starting in the ages and how difficult it is for players under 23 to get a chance, even if they're good enough. And then you see players on the roster like Rodrigo Huescas and Mateo Chavez. They're both European-based. Maybe the plan all along is for them to start against South Korea and Nashville, so they'll get an opportunity there. But I feel like we may need to see a transition happen where they are the starting fullbacks ahead of the World Cup. And France made a similar transition ahead of the 2018 World Cup. They let Djibril Sidibe make way for Benjamin Pavard, and they let an ex-Manchester City dirtbag make way for Lucas Hernandez. So they were able to make that transition in the nick of time, and they did not win a World Cup if Sidibe is starting at right back over Benjamin Pavard. There's no banger goal against Argentina to get them through the round of 16, let alone all the other things that Pavard did well in that World Cup run. So sometimes you got to take a gamble maybe on these under 23 players And I think they are playing it safe still with Gilberto Mora, and rightfully so. You have to protect the 16-year-old. You have to give him the opportunity to represent his nation at the U20 World Cup, where Mexico has performed well in these underage tournaments. I'll never forget the gold medal that they won at the 2012 Olympics, which was essentially an under 23 with 3 senior players roster. So that's a very important tournament for Mexico still, and I'm very curious to see what Mora is going to do. Who knows? Maybe he'll have Tijuana make a run in a Liguilla before the World Cup, something. But that's one of the more exciting parts of the Mexican roster that is probably lacking and has people, particularly the Spanish language media, critique Javier Aguirre's selection process, who keeps reassuring that he's close to filling his World Cup roster. Of course, that's going to be submitted in December, same with all the other teams. But any other thoughts you have, maybe like whether or not Santiago Jimenez can be an effective player off the bench, because he's kind of in an iffy situation with Milan, who aren't doing so well, Cesar?
I think he's just in a mix of like not doing well for club and country, and I feel like a lot of it on the Mexico side has to do with just the game functioning or the team functioning together. He doesn't have that quality that he had maybe at Feyenoord, where he can just be put balls into the space and he runs into and just finishes. And it goes along with what we talked about with just the quality in the midfield. Maybe we'll see some better quality once Gilberto Mora comes onto the picture, or maybe Obed Vargas slips in there as well, that we haven't talked to him about him. But it's just, as long as he doesn't show it off at AC Milan or now at Roma, that where he's going to go, it's going to be really hard for him to get minutes over Raul Jimenez. Because Raul Jimenez does this in the Premier League, right? He's one of the starters, if not gets a lot of minutes, and he puts up assists and goals, and just style of play, I feel like, would complements the team a lot more than Santi Jimenez.
And I'm glad Aguirre's given Raul Jimenez the opportunity to be the locked-in starter there. It's better to be a consistent performer at a mid-table club like Fulham than to not play well for a bigger club like AC Milan. And we'll see what happens with Roma, if he is going to be out on loan Roma, or if it's a permanent transfer. I'm not sure. He's going to have competition. Evan Ferguson was once a highly touted Premier League prospect. Artem Dovbyk is representing Ukraine, so it's not going to be easy for him either. Surprisingly, I think maybe it's a concern when one of your better attackers in the game is Irving Lozano, and that's a big point of contention from a Mexican perspective, that they don't necessarily want to see an MLS player be at their World Cup. Even if Carlos Vela did score for them in the 2018 World Cup when he was an LAFC player. But Devon, do you think that when all said and done in June, if Irving Lozano continues to do well for San Diego FC, you could see him on a World Cup roster?
I could see him on a World Cup roster for sure, given San Diego's form right now. Success is what drives a nation and a team. So if you bring on all the most successful players, that is more often than not the case of having a successful tournament like the World Cup. I do think the addition of a couple other wingers and maybe some absences of strikers. I think one of the Danish wingers had left the team to go to another MLS club. I think this provides more opportunity for attack and attacking space for Irving Lozano, and I think in the next 4 or 5 games, I think we may see more stats coming from him in points and assists.
And then the last player I want to highlight before I get some general thoughts on the game, and then we'll get into the big moment. Abram, I know that you've followed Diego Lainez a lot, and you've seen some of the highs and lows of his career. Well, how would you feel about maybe a redemption arc if he is able to get one of those coveted World Cup roster spots?
I mean, I don't care who's in that spot if they earn it. if he does something to make me to make the Mexican Federation, I actually don't matter. It doesn't matter what I think, but if he does something to prove that like he should be in that spot and it's undeniable, then I want him in that spot. If he's playing better than Alvarado, I want him in that spot. I don't. I really. It's about merit for me. And let's be honest. Who else are you looking at? Like we don't have in that spot at least. There's not too many names I can think of unless I'm wrong. Playing in Europe, playing at a higher level. Um, so yeah, it boils down to merit for me. Not much else. I don't care if like some guy like 32-year-old just like just decides to start trying for some reason in his career and then ends up in that spot instead of Linus. It's about merit.
Yeah, I think this is also like a game of form too. Like you have to be in form to be considered for a call up and to just play successfully in your position and as a team. If you're not in form, then you're not going to succeed. So form fluctuates. Form fluctuates from game to game, or maybe even like a set of 4 games, and 4 games of form, and then 4 games of not in form. And those 4 games of being not in form may hinder the ability to progress as a player. And there's a bunch of there's a lot of psychology to that too. If you're not in good form, then your attributes may decrease, and you may want to find another club. So there's no promises, there's no guarantees in the world of soccer, the world of football, however you want to pronounce it or say it. But I think at least in the next 5 or 6 months, I think coaches are going to pay more key, I think, to the European leagues now that the North American leagues will slowly come to a close. And a lot of players, it's kind of weird to me that like in the World Cup specifically, at least with North American players, they will only be given like maybe 4 months, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 4 or 3 months to really prove themselves early in the season once the MLS or Liga MX strikes back again. Whereas the European world, they'll be in full form. Their season will be coming to a close, and those players, at least as a USMNT fan, like Pulisic or Weah or any of those guys, Wes McKennie, they will be in top form, and you'll know exactly what you're going to get from them in the World Cup. Whereas here in North America, players over here are going to be absolutely fighting for the first 3 months to even be considered on the roster.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the names of players that have been called up from Mexico that weren't in this roster. We already spoke about Alberto Mora. Obviously, for the actual World Cup, he's locked in. He's got to be there. But for midfield, the other notable midfielders, we were without Luis Romo and Luis Chavez, who's playing for Dinamo Moscow. And then for the attackers, I would like to see more Cesar Huerta. That would be a nice player to see get more opportunities. But then you're looking at, okay, we know what we get with Henry Martin. It would only be to have a third striker behind the 2 Jimenezes. And then if a Liga MX player is like, meh, and MLS players on the Mexican roster are like, I don't know, then especially for Aguirre, he does not appreciate Julian Quiñones being in Saudi, and that's something that you mentioned with Omar in the last Gol Sided podcast. So we're looking at pretty much, I'd say, at least 22 of the 26 spots could potentially be from this roster that Aguirre called up in this camp. And along with Malagon, I was prepared to praise Montes in my article that I wrote about this game up until the red card, Cesar.
Yeah, unfortunately, he ended up getting a red card and sent off early. A couple minutes early. But I think overall, just the back line, apart from Gallardo, did a decent job. Cesar Montes, wow, where is he at now? He's in Russia still, right? But him and Johan Vasquez are the starting center back pairing that we're going to have. Apart from injury, I don't see anybody else slipping in there. I don't see the Mexican center back.
Arteaga?
Gosh, I forgot his name. No, Israel Reyes. Yeah, jumping in there and stealing the spot. I think those two are locked in. And I think after this game, I am confident to say maybe Jorge Sanchez can be locked in as well. He probably had the best game that I've seen in recent memory for Mexico. But I think Rodrigo Huescas has a good claim to that spot too. So again, to Devon's point, like the next few seasons in Liga MX, or the next few months in Liga MX, and for Rodrigo Huescas playing Champions League qualifiers, or no, he's in Champions League, playing Champions League and having good performances, are going to get him an opportunity again right before the World Cup, and maybe sneak in there or battle it out. But on the left side, I think Mateo Chavez needs to start. I think Gallardo's time is done. I think Mateo he needs to consolidate himself in Alkmaar. I think that's how you pronounce it, in the Danish league, and be the starter there, so you can say, yo, Javier Aguirre, I'm your guy at the left back position.
I think we have the most qualified content creator in Bay Area soccer when it comes to Danish soccer with Devon, so he will be keeping an eye on Rodrigo Huescas more than any other Mexican player besides Chucky Lozano with his contributions to MLS, right, Devon?
I'll be looking out for him for sure.
Yeah, playing for Copenhagen, one of the big ones there, along with Michelin. So that's a interesting player to see. You don't see too many Mexicans in the Nordic leagues, so nice, different experiences. And who knows, Mexico could be drawn in a group with any of potentially Denmark, Sweden, or Norway. I know that European qualifiers are just getting started, so it remains to be seen. My tectonic take for this international game is that of the non-UEFA and CONMEBOL nations, Morocco is the top of that list, but Japan is the second. So I don't think we should be doom and gloom for Mexico's prospects because they got outplayed by Japan. They're a top 20 team for a reason. And Japan, they're as close as any of those outsider confederation nations to making a quarterfinal. And I was speaking to one of the many Japanese journalists that were there. They flew in from Japan just for this game as well as their upcoming game against the United States in Columbus. This particular journalist, his name was Masao Kurihara, he interviewed me as well as Daniel Poulter, who covers Oakland Roots as well, just asking us about our general thoughts on the game, our thoughts on U.S. soccer, Mexico soccer, and Japan. And he stated pretty clearly that many of us believe that Japan should be aiming for a quarterfinal spot in the World Cup. And considering they were penalty shootout away the last World Cup, that's a reasonable objective. And I honestly believe that they have a good shot at doing that. So there's a lot of optimism among Japanese media. It was a pleasure to get to know them. I know that it wasn't easy for them with the language barrier, and here in the Bay Area, when it comes to our soccer scene, we have a lot more accommodations for the Spanish media. We did our best to accommodate the Japanese media, but they were a pleasure to have. That we, the words that I exchanged with them, and many of them did speak English and were able to communicate with me. It was fun sharing the space with everybody. So it was a very wonderful experience there. But do y'all agree that Japan probably second best outside of those two powerhouse confederations, or is that tectonic take?
I mean, yeah, they're a super strong team. I everything you said about them, I 100% agree. When you talked about this, this game leading, like when you told us you had the credentials and stuff, I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, they are a very tough team. I think they have a higher floor than us for sure, because of just the quality of the leagues in which their best players play, and even like just their average player like is playing in a really high league. Like, it's where Mexico needs to improve, in my opinion. They're doing it.
Yeah, if I had to put Mexico on that list, I'd say Mexico could have a claim to third, but then you also have to consider some other African teams, like maybe Senegal. I think South Korea have entered the conversation too. I mean, granted, beating the United States, not much of an accomplishment these days, but they looked really good. And they're not just Heung-min Son. If you think that South Korea are going to tail off just because their star player moved to MLS, that doesn't mean too much. We saw Gareth Bale move to LAFC, that same club, right before the World Cup. And sure, he was the main headliner for Wales ahead of that, but he still played an important role, and they have a strong unit surrounding him. They have other players that they can step up. So, yeah, just quickly rattling off, yeah, USA, they are in the toilet right now. They're by far the third best team of the three host nations going to this World Cup. And they have a lot of things to figure out. Enough with the Tristan Blackman, enough with the dartboard MLS player call-ups. They have to be top-tier MLS players to make this World Cup roster. Pochettino has to figure it out. Whatever vendettas he has with some of these European-based players, he needs to make sure they're getting a look. And then if Pulisic and Weah cannot talk that much before the World Cup, I would appreciate that. Those are my thoughts on the USA. Devon, anything to add on to that particular?
I want to go back to the Asia point, and I think
Yeah.
South Korea is definitely a strong contender for number two. I mean,
Yes.
I do recall maybe I don't recall. It's kind of sad admitting this, but you know, as a Germany fan that I am, I'm trying to remember. They put up a pretty strong fight against Germany, and I totally forget what the result was, the scoreline, but they definitely impressed during that round of the World Cup enough to make me believe that South Korea is a very strong contender, and especially with more South Koreans moving to the Premier League and making appearances and kind of, you know, bringing South Korea to a bigger face of the planet now through the world of football. I definitely see them being, personally, it could be a tectonic take, just like Ivan, a stronger contender than Japan, and potentially at some point just as strong of a contender as Morocco.
Yeah, and huge shout out to the two sections of Japanese supporters. I'm sure many of them were in the United States, but also many of them flew over from Japan. They shouted "Nippon, Nippon," which is of course Japanese for Japan, very loudly, even though they were outnumbered probably 200 to 1 in the Oakland Coliseum. You heard them just as loudly as the Mexican supporters. And that was incredible. I'll mention just quickly about the Coliseum support. This felt like a love letter to international soccer and a dress rehearsal for Levi Stadium hosting World Cup games next summer. If you can pack 45,000 sellout crowd in Oakland, in a Coliseum that is much more dated than Levi Stadium, then bring over any national teams, and there's going to be some great crowds in Levi Stadium. Abram.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Evans because this was obviously a big deal for you personally to get these credentials, get accepted. During this whole process, what was the highlight for you? Because obviously a lot of new things in this experience, but what was your favorite part of it?
I was just in awe of the people that I shared the press with. Many of my colleagues, yes, but also people I've watched in ESPN Deportes, whether it be like clips here and there or whenever I travel to Mexico. People I've watched on Univision. I was a few rows back from Mafer Alonso asking a question to Javier Aguirre. Like, this is star power right here. This is just incredible experience, and it felt like a culmination of my journey in terms of what I've hoped to accomplish with the Tectonic Takes podcast and with my blogs. I made it clear these last few years in particular that I don't know if I'm ever going to transition careers into journalism. It's not what I studied in school. It's a tough nut to crack for a full-time job. Our boy Favi, he's doing his best, and he's doing a great job as well, doing that as his work. But if this is the only international match I get to cover, I don't know if I'll even dip my toes. Maybe I'll apply for credentials for the World Cup. But I do feel like 2026, I do want to scale back a little bit and just balance out for more life and work and having free time on the weekends with my family and friends. But I think that was just a bucket list sort of thing. And it meant a lot to me, particularly because it was Mexico and because it was Oakland Coliseum. My family grew up in East Bay. They lived in Oakland for many years when they moved from Mexico. Uh, I was born in Oakland, even though I didn't live too long in Oakland before we moved to Hercules. And my first ever sporting event, 7, 8, 9 years old, somewhere in that age range, was an Oakland A's baseball game. So I was just like, I don't care what happens, and like that's why I'm one of the few Mexican fans not completely hating the result, because it was about preparation for the World Cup too. It was a love letter to international soccer. It was a love letter to Bay Area soccer. It shows that, you know, even in a difficult season for all of our teams, Sounds Earthquakes fighting for a playoff spot, and unfortunately Oakland Roots and Bay FC potentially fighting losing battles for playoff spots. That we have a very strong soccer culture here, and we're all here in this space together because of that, because soccer is a big part of our lives.
I hope you took many pictures and videos because it definitely seems like a full circle moment. Really happy for you, Ivan.
Yeah, for me, I kind of experienced the moment itself. So I did take a few pictures here and there. I took home my little tag that has tectonic takes on it, Mextor, Bienvenidos, that sort of thing. Took a few pictures of the stadium. I wanted to respect the space, of course, and respect people's time. So I just had the opportunity. If I talked to someone, great. I wasn't going to try to take pictures. Another meaningful interaction I did have was I got to talk to Abel and I. We both talked to a student. She's a grad student at Berkeley that she's covering the game for the sports column at one of the newspapers there. So this was a big deal for a lot of local writers as well for this opportunity. And I made sure I thanked both the organizer from Mextor as well as Tommy, who's been really good to me. He's the media manager at Oakland Roots, and it showed how much that Mexico and Japan, their coaches, they were very complimentary of Oakland Roots, particularly for Mexico providing a training facility. Japan was able to get a training facility at UC Berkeley as well, so they didn't have to schedule time for both teams. I'm sure they did for the last day of preparation, but even though the big headline was, oh yeah, of course it was Oakland, they got robbed at the hotel. Okay, sure, you could get robbed at a hotel in any city in the world, but there's a lot more to Oakland than just the negative headlines.
I mean, I got robbed, or I didn't personally get robbed. I watched a robbery in a random hotel in Copenhagen, Denmark, and they're very known for not having weapons and whatnot and not being dangerous. So it can literally happen anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's very important that with soccer, we are very keenly aware of how intercultural it is. There's so many Mexican cultures at club level, at international level, that you get even more respect than you already have if you're a great person, that you understand all of these cultures blend into beautiful communities, and you can see past those narratives. But sometimes some people need a little bit more reminding. And the Bay Area Soccer Party doesn't start. I think it was nice that we had a international friendly with no strings attached, because now the urgency level dials right back up, because Sounds Earthquakes, they gotta pick up more points still, because they may be in a playoff position now, but they're still in a very vulnerable position. But luckily, they have some good recent history against LAFC at Levi Stadium. They're probably gonna have to bank on that history. But the last time that they faced LAFC at Levi Stadium, they were introducing Hernan Lopez, and they were getting goal contributions from Amal Pellegrino. So, Abram, that already shows how different that this challenge is going to be, and how much of a challenge that they're going to be up against Heung-min Son, Denny Bouanga, and Hugo Lloris and company.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we were a different team at that time. But I do have a lot of optimism. I think that what we saw this season, in my opinion, was that although Hernan helped us last game against LAFC, and Amal Pellegrino helped as well, this season they kind of were holding us back. I think Amal Pellegrino, I think that there's a lot of quality about him, but if fate decided he couldn't score, what is he gonna do? He just couldn't score for the life of him. It's not his fault. He's not a bad player because of it. He just couldn't score, and so you got to move on. Same a similar thing with Hernan Lopez is just he wasn't fitting our system. We got to move on. And so with that, we got to look at what we have now, and I think that we have a very strong team going into this match. We didn't have Chicho last time. We didn't have Josef Martinez. That those right there are some big reasons why we should, still be in contention. Chicho hasn't been performing that great, but he still has 12 goals on the season. Same with Josef Martinez. And we have Christian Espinosa back, which is going to be a huge boost. I was looking at the stats for LAFC's game against San Diego, and although they had a very high volume of attacking actions, they only got 4 shots on target out of 17, and they racked up 2.7 xg, and they only got a goal from that. Meanwhile, San Diego got zero point 0.7 xg and got 2 goals, and they had way better possession, way better on target percentage. They managed to keep the game calm and make sure that they got out of there with the victory. Even though LAFC has a lot of attacking talent and they're going to be knocking on the door, they were able to hold it tight. That's something that's going to be it might be a problem for San Jose. We are not a defensively sound team that's able to lock down offenses, but that's where there's going to be a lot of heat in this game. It's going to be back and forth, up and down.
Abram and Cesar, I do have a question for you guys, kind of bouncing off that. Who would be players you're interested in seeing on the field, at least in the starting 11, maybe as subs at some point, to kind of build a better defensive wall against the, as Danny, my dog, enters the room, to build a better, I guess, wall against the LAFC onslaught?
Go for it, Cesar.
I think for me, Bill LaRue.
Yeah.
I think him being in that midfielder gives us a lot of freshness, youth, that we can maybe battle the midfield. And also going forward, I know he scored quite a few goals at the beginning of the season, so he can definitely help. It sounds like Earthquake solidify, and I think just being in LA at Levi Stadium, just in general, I think the last 2 times we were there, they won. So maybe it's a Levi's thing, but in general, just being really solid can help us. Then whatever we come up going forward is all positive gain.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. Bo LaRue is a big factor in this match. We've been talking about him all season, but I was looking at the stats. I love stats, if you can't tell. And he's in the top 5 for pretty much every single stat you can think of, including goals. He's great defensively, great offensively. Weston in the Discord, he brought up a very good point that the pairing of Ronaldo Vieira and Ian Harkes may, for some people, they might see that and be like, okay, that's a better defensive lineup in the midfield. When we have Chicho at the 10, we want to protect him. But we had some issues with progressing the ball, and that is the main thing you want Bolaru on the field for, in my opinion. He's very good at crashing the other box, but he's very calm, pretty press resistant, and he's able to get long passes. He's able to switch the ball very, very accurately. He's one of the best in our team for long balls. He's got to be in this game, man. I don't know what Bruce is doing. I think that he maybe sees something in the training ground. I do have to say there's been a little bit of a dip in form for Bolaru, but even with that dip, I still see him as our strongest midfield option. I think that Ronaldo Vieira has been very solid defensively, but he's not 100% match fit. So for me, it's obvious if you want a change between the last match and the match coming up, you got to get Bolaru in there.
I agree.
Ivan, your thoughts?
Reading Fabi's article on Bolaru, it dawned on me just how infrequent players can go through his journey back and forth in the academy, playing some college soccer, and then he had to bide his time at Quakes 2, the town, before getting an unexpected breakout this season. And then on top of that, you look at the list of U.S. soccer players, not even just U.S. men's national team players, but soccer players in general, men and women's side. One of the demographics that we haven't seen many of come through, and this is what Fabi highlighted, is Asian Americans. And there are a lot of them that play soccer and maybe don't get as many opportunities due to a lot of flaws in our U.S. soccer culture in terms of which players get opportunities. When I think at the highest level, there's been a few Asian Americans that have represented the USMNT, the likes of Brian Ching and Lee Nguyen, but they were fleeting presences. Like, they only had a few years where they represented that national team. Another player that it could have been, Zion Suzuki. He was born in Newark, New Jersey, and then he represents Japan now. But I think Bo LaRue being able to potentially share the field with Sun Hyung Min, I think is going to be a big moment for Asian Americans that follow the sport, that have passion for this game. And it's important that we see that more players get opportunities and aren't excluded for whatever reason. So I think that's a big story there, and Fabi did a fantastic job highlighting that in his article on Urban Pitch. And he's just one of many reasons why it's been such a pleasure to watch the San Jose Earthquakes this season.
Abram, or not Abram, Ivan, I commend you so much week in, week out for knowing all these random players that none of us know. And you just, you bring in a new player that we have to learn every week, and I just find that so fascinating.
The footy knowledge goes crazy.
For real, dude.
That's why I panic every time they're like, I have some trivia for you. I'm like, oh my god. What is this going to be? I'm so scared.
Well, Abram, I have some trivia.
He's manifested it.
Hey guys, that's the video for
nation,
me. Go Quakes.
A second African nation punched their ticket to the World Cup this upcoming summer. Morocco already punched their ticket. If I narrow it down to North Africa, could you guess who is the second African nation that's already confirmed to be in U.S., Canada, and Mexico in 9 months' time?
So I'm thinking Algeria or Egypt, but I don't know, for some reason I'm like Algeria. What do you think?
Cesar, Devon, do you have a vote?
Algeria would have been my guess as well. I feel like Egypt's too obvious.
I thought I saw something about Mo Salah confirming for the World Cup, but I could be waffling right now. But no, I genuinely don't have a guess. I'll just go with Algeria as well.
You might have been thinking of Mo Salah defending Darwin Nunez's honor on Twitter a few days ago. But Egypt has to wait a little bit longer because it's Tunisia that punched their ticket to the World Cup. They got a win in their World Cup qualifier earlier today against the only Spanish-speaking African nation, Equatorial Guinea. So that was a big win for Tunisia, that they were in that World Cup group with Denmark, Australia, and France. The last World Cup, we'll see how they fare in this World Cup. So thank you, Abram, for queuing me up for that trivia.
The only Tunisian player I can probably name is Hannibal, the ex-Manchester United academy player with the crazy hair who would always get red cards and stuff. But he had a crazy tacker. So if he's playing for them, he chose them over France, I believe. Very strong player.
The other one that came to mind first, because of the situation with Sheffield Wednesday and their finances, was Jan Valeri, who represents Tunisia and plays wingback for them. But yeah, Hannibal Medri is a big one too. And the key for me learning more about soccer is that every week on my notes app, I look at FootMob and see what games are on each day, where the streaming services are, and if I'm not doing anything, if I put something on the background, especially during the day where there's not going to be conflict with North American-based sports during the weekdays, for example, I like to put on a soccer game there. So just from hearing the audio as I'm doing work in between classes, in between teaching, that's how I learn about new players. And occasionally you find out about players that will eventually transfer to a bigger league or a bigger club or end up at the World Cup in 2026. So you never know.
This is how you know Ivan isn't about the bullshit. He lives and breathes through his career field and his personal life, at home and abroad, everywhere he goes, lives and breathes soccer. You just have to applaud him.
And it helps me prepare for my job. I'm a big believer of productive procrastination. I teach intercultural communication. In this class day, we talked about Central America and the Caribbean. And of course, I use a variety of examples to appeal to a variety of different students. So, like Usain Bolt, Bob Marley, when we talk about Jamaica, and we talk about, many of the Haitian writers of the Harlem Renaissance. But specifically for Costa Rica, for example, I had to mention that they've had that brilliant run in the 2014 FIFA World Cup as well. So I do mix and match my topics, but the biggest way that I tell my students is that you can learn more about other cultures by doing the things you do every day. You don't have to travel around the world. You just, whether it's sports, whether it's art, whether it's music, you're exposed to more cultures than you may recognize. So it definitely broadens our horizons there.
I think
Yes.
in California specifically, I think that's very common too, because like especially with international games, and tracing this back to our original topic of just either whether it be Mexico versus Japan or even like Colombia, where we've had a huge sellout of Colombia fans gathering in downtown or in certain aspects of southern part the South Bay area. There's a very large presence of a variety of international fans and clubs, and I'm kind of looking forward to the Earthquakes figuring out a way to tap into that market once we get new ownership.
Yeah, I mean, we got Rango.
Oh, sorry,
to add to that, like even being around the Bay, like you go to Pleasanton, like different culture there. You go to the South Bay to Gilroy, even in Sunday League, like Colombians are like dominating Gilroy Sunday League. So it's really fun to learn and to like hear people talk and just go out to different restaurants, and I think it's amazing. And the World Cup coming around gets you more excited when there's so many different nations represented in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
100%. One of my favorite cuisines, just because I've just been exposed to it, and Cesar, I'm sorry if this offends you, but Salvadorian food. Oh my God! Like they got like basically the same ingredients, but they're doing something different with it. Like it's just crazy different, especially chicharrón con yuca. Oh my God! It's simple, but it's different.
I've only had their what are they called? What they're famous for? The little gorditas, the Salvadorians, dude. I haven't had their yuca, which I really want to try one day.
Yeah, definitely check it out if you get a chance. There's little places everywhere.
yeah. My Salvadoran place is Taqueria Torgos in Larkspur. So in between my afternoon class on Wednesdays and my evening class from 6 to 9, if I don't feel like packing my own food or cooking the night before, I'll go to that Salvadoran restaurant. It's really nice. We're approaching the end of our time here. Why don't we get one quick last thought or expectation about the LAFC San Jose Earthquakes game? So rather than a score prediction, if you want to have a score prediction, you can. But I like to do a qualifier. So the San Jose Earthquakes will win this game if ... Something has to happen for the San Jose Earthquakes to win this game. And for me, I'm looking at LAFC's record recently. They played 3 of their last 4 games on the road, and they won once and drew twice. So they're getting a lot of points on the road. Granted, up against the likes of Chicago Fire, New England, and Dallas. So for the San Jose Earthquakes to inflict LAFC their first road loss in over a month, which was to the Whitecaps, I think that the Earthquakes have to hold them to 2 goals. I think that the Quakes could maybe scrape a 3-2 win or at least a 2-2 draw. But there's a high chance that LAFC, despite being 5th in the Western Conference, that they are seeing red when they see the blue of the Quakes. Maybe it's the red of the 49ers seats at Levi Stadium, but they have the firepower with the likes of Buwanga, with they have Son, of course, but also 22-year-old winger from Ukraine. I'm going to pull up his name here shortly. He's another X factor for him. Artem Smolyakov. So he's another dangerous player there. So I think that 2-goal minimum. And I think that the Quakes obviously should aim for less, but we got to be realistic. So that's my qualifier here. So, Abram, the Quakes will get a positive result against the LAFC if what happens in your mind?
If Christian Espinosa has a good game, I think that we could definitely look at a win here. I think that if you're looking at the Magic in San Diego, both of their wingers were the ones who scored. So if we can utilize our width to the maximum potential, I think that we'd really give them a hard time, especially looking at their fullbacks, maybe a little bit attacking. If we can, get them behind them and give them a hard time, there could be a promising result, but also I'm going to put in the caveat that they have a very strong attack as well, and we have a very bad defense, so we'll see.
All right, and I'm guessing by a good game, a goal contribution is minimum, but maybe 2 goal contributions? Is that your TikTok?
Like goal and assist, that is the minimum that we need to see from Christian, and he's had enough time to have a break. We should be seeing him 100% fit. I don't think we have any major injuries right now that I can think of. We have a pretty good amount of players that we can call up to be in the squad. So should be good.
All right, Devon.
Kind of to build off of what Abram just said, we have a lot of players that have been, tapping minutes into the Town FC. Nico Tsakeris, Benji Kikanovic, other first-team players that you would normally see on the Earthquakes roster from maybe like last year or 2 years ago. They're getting fitness, they're getting confidence, they're building everything up again. There might be a chance that we see them. There might not, knowing Bruce. But to answer your question, Ivan, specifically, I think if we keep LAFC out of our box, not just the simple small 6-yard one, but the 18 and the little dome, if we prevent LAFC from entering the box and taking long shots, I think we have a good chance of at least getting a draw out of the game. But also, winning games is our priority to making playoffs. And I think to do that, we have to start distributing aggressive plays, aggressive balls, whether it be on the deck, through to the 6-yard box, or between the 6-yard box and the 18 on the penalty spot. It needs to be low-driven crosses so players like Chicho and Josef are able to finish with their one-touches, because I don't see Chicho or Josef finishing lots of chances with their head on our team. A lot of their finishes are from their feet, and I think we need to tap more into that.
There we go. So, Cesar.
Yeah, I mean, just echoing what Devon said, I feel like even if the San Jose Earthquakes are able to keep LAFC out of the box or just be really solid defensively, we need to be really good attacking. To give an example, talking about stats, Earthquakes had expected goals 1.7 to Austin's 1.46. We need to finish the chances you get because we need to secure our place in the playoffs. So if we worked on that during the week, now with Cristian Espinosa coming back in, we can be a bit more hopeful. But at the end of the day, you have to play the game and you have to salt them away.
The situation regarding the chase back is a little bit less stressful in the sense that Real Salt Lake would need to maximize their points from their 2 games in hand to overtake San Jose Earthquakes, whereas Dallas can no longer overtake Quakes even with their game in hand. But you still have to take these last 5 games very seriously. I'm thinking a minimum of 9 points in their final 15 games would be necessary to feel good about your chances of getting to the playoffs in your own power. definitely 7 or 8, but anything less than that, you're really testing your luck. But I'm excited for the second to last big game of the season. We're hoping that the last game of the season is a big game in a positive reason if it's decision day, or somehow it's not a big game at all and we're assured of a spot by them, but I don't think that's the case at this point. We know it's coming down to the wire, and it's going to be a great night out at Levi Stadium, 5:30 p.m., and you know how the parking can be. If you're not taking public transportation, you better get there by 1 o'clock, so definitely free up the rest of your day because you got to make sure you're there and enjoying the experience. But that's all our time for today. This is episode 150. We just hit the hour mark. And regardless of subscribers, thank you so much for everyone that subscribed. Regardless of how often you view us, for how long you've been watching us for these last 5 years since we've been doing this, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've had so many people come and go, contribute to this. We're thankful for all our guests, and we have fun doing it. And that's what we do it for, having fun, representing the Bay Area, and telling you about the Sounds Earthquakes, and then a little bit of extra like today on occasion. So we really appreciate all your support, and Gol Sided is just as worthy of your support. I know coming up for your next episode, you'll probably recap the Mexico versus South Korea friendly. You got more Liga MX to cover, as well as more from the European leagues. You got another Mexico match to cover in your next episode against South Korea, and there's going to be more Liga MX and more European footy. When can people expect your podcast, both on their podcast platform of choice and YouTube?
On Thursdays, we record Wednesday evenings, so Thursday morning, bright and early. Omar, the co-host, has them out for you guys. Anywhere on YouTube, on Spotify, anywhere you can catch podcasts will be on there. Check us out, Gol Sided Podcast.
Exactly. Their YouTube link will be in our description. Of course, support them, support us, and there's always room for great content with so many talented people out there, and we're so happy to call you and Omar and everyone in the Gol Sided community and your Discord server our friends. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having me.
I also want to just quickly state we are 5 subscribers away. 5 subscribers away from 500 here at Tectonic Takes.
Dude, I know you guys got 5 friends at least. One of you has
about 5 different emails you guys have.
There's about 5 different alternate accounts out there. I know we can make it happen.
Yeah, so that's a nice little milestone. But yeah, that'll do it for us today at Tectonic Takes. We're rooting for Mexico to do well. At least 3 of us are. Many of our listeners. We'll see if the USA can pick up their act. But most importantly, go Quakes.
Go
Go
Quakes.
Quakes.
Let's get it.